Hello and welcome. My name is Stephen Gummany, Regional Product Manager for Benio. On behalf of everyone at Benio, we are excited to join the Food Navigator Positive Nutrition Series to discuss our insight and solutions for plant-based foods. At Benio, our mission is connecting nutrition and health, and we achieve this goal by producing functional food ingredients, all made from the power of plants. Our product lines include functional fibers from chicory root, functional carbohydrates from sugar beet, rice ingredients, and functional plant-based proteins. With these ingredients, we manage to meet the different megatrends in nutrition and health. Today, along with my good friends Hannah and Barbara, we're going to take a journey into the world of plant-based foods. We will have a look at the regional market trends and discover how Benio ingredients help to meet many of the challenges faced by this industry. All trends evolve, and I think it's clear today that plant-based foods are well accepted by most consumers. To help us understand what's going on in the consumer's mind, I'd like to introduce our market intelligence expert, Ms. Hannah Bean. Hannah, what are consumers expecting from plant-based foods in the future?
Thank you, Stephen, for the nice introduction. Let's dive into plant-based dairy. To begin with, almost 1 in 2 global consumers is interested in plant-based food and drink, and it's more than a trend. Plant-based is a relatively recent societal development in the general population that's leading to a fundamental shift in how we're going to eat and drink in the future. Why societal? Because it already affects many areas of our lives. There are now vegan restaurants with Michelin stars, mainstream fast food chains with exclusively vegetarian offerings, and thinking outside the food and beverage industry, there are now things like plant-based cosmetics or plant-based leather and silk in the fashion and automotive industry. And plant-based is certainly all over the news. Quoting here the New York Times, plant-based foods expand, with consumers hungry for more. And it's also a key trend for Innova Market Insights this year, and Nielsen reports growing demand for plant-based proteins, to name just a few. So that's the big picture. Now let's zoom in on plant-based dairy in the Americas. Continuing strong interest in plant-based dairy is reflected best in category growth. Just looking at the milk alternatives alone, which still represent the bulk of the category, we see strong annual growth of around 9% for both North and Latin America. This year is the compound annual growth rate forecasted from 2021 to 2026. Secondly, the region sees rising shares of plant-based vegan and vegetarian claims in new product launches, and that's actually true for other markets as well, by the way. What's important to note here is that the growth of vegetarian claims has been rather modest in the last few years, while vegan claims are really taking off, and so are the more recent plant-based claims we see here that are especially suited to attract a new and powerful type of consumer. And that's the flexitarian. Flexitarians are most commonly defined as people who often eat vegetarian but also still eat meat, fish, or dairy. We saw that almost 1 in 2 global consumers is interested in plant-based food and drink, but almost as many are interested in products that combine meat and plant-based proteins. The New York Times already described this neatly in an article launched back in 2019. It's called Plant-Based. Look it up. There's a difference between disavowing all animal byproducts and simply trying to eat less meat. That gives us a huge audience. A quarter of the world's population consider themselves flexitarian. And that's not counting those who say they are thinking of turning to plant-based food and drinks more often in the future. I'd say that's reason enough to take a closer look at what flexitarians want from their plant-based dairy. In Beneo's latest global plant-based research, we can zoom in on motivators and barriers to plant-based eating from around the world. Let's look at flexitarian consumers in the US and Brazil. Here, general motivators are naturalness, health, and a balanced diet, whereas naturalness is number 1 in the US and health is number 1 in Brazil. Moving on to health and nutritional motivations, we see that the US top 3 are plant-based dairy is easier to digest, it's lower in fat and contains more nutrients, for example fiber. In Brazil it's a bit similar, but low in fat here comes in first priority, followed by digestibility and then the focus on nutrients. When it comes to barriers to plant-based dairy consumption, the majority of global consumers find the products too expensive. That's true also for the US and for Brazil. Flexitarian consumers are also faced with the challenge that their family maybe doesn't like the taste of plant-based dairy, and a lot of US consumers consider plant-based dairy too processed or not natural enough. In Brazil, price is also the most important barrier to plant-based dairy consumption, but here many flexitarians also say that the products just aren't indulgent enough yet. Last but not least, flexitarian consumers have slightly different preferences when it comes to claims. In the US, the top 5 most convincing claims are low in calories, plant-based, organic, high in fiber, and natural ingredients. In Brazil, the top 5 look a bit differently. Here it's additive-free, low in fat, gluten-free, lactose-free, and natural ingredients. So in both countries, there's a strong preference for natural ingredients, and this can help you choose the right on-pack communication. Also, last but not least, plant-based for both countries comes up way higher in the list than vegan claims or vegetarian claims. "85% of Brazilian consumers find it important to know how food is made and what's in it, and 50% of US consumers say they pay more attention to the ingredients of the food they buy since the pandemic. So familiar ingredients always work well. Rice has a very good reputation. Consumers consider it easy to digest, natural and healthy. No wonder that 67% of global consumers consider rice a very appealing source for plant-based dairy. And almost 70% are already familiar with rice protein. Again, even better scores for rice in Brazil. Let me conclude by taking a look at the trends in the plant-based dairy category. Where's plant-based dairy heading? We see a clear focus on plant-based indulgence as consumers around the world want plant-based products with creamy textures and full-bodied mouthfeel. It's safe to say that variety in taste has been a virtue for plant-based dairy so far, but we're also seeing a lot of launches these days trying to be as close as possible to milk-based products in taste and texture. For example, a majority of Brazilian consumers prefers plant-based dairy to have a neutral, non-cereal taste. The next wave of plant-based dairy is expected to focus on sustainability and improve nutritional profiles, for example, low-fat products or products that are high in fiber. Another trend topic is plant-based cheese. It's been around for a while, but in terms of indulgent products that deliver similar properties as milk-based cheese, well, that continues to be a bit of a challenge. Luckily, Beneo has a range of plant-based functional ingredients that help a great deal in creating tasty plant-based dairy products. This lovely vegan cheesecake here, for example, or a rice-based cream cheese alternative are just 2 of our many indulgent recipes. That's it from my side. Let's turn it back to Stephen to hear more about the many exciting Beneo solutions for plant-based dairy.
Thanks, Hannah. I'm really excited to see what the future holds for plant-based foods. And I really appreciate your market insight to tell us how to develop the best new products and what consumers are really looking for. For the rest of our time here today, we're going to take a deep dive into the world of dairy alternatives. The plant-based category is so large, so broad, we could not possibly cover all of it today. And we really wanted to focus in on some of the work that our Beneo Technology Center has done around the dairy alternative space in particular. To do this, I'd like to welcome my colleague, Barbara Pecker, live from sunny Sao Paulo. Hi, Barbara.
Hi, Stephen. How are you doing today?
I am doing great. Thank you so much for joining us. Barbara, we decided to focus on dairy alternatives today, and I'd like to know, from your opinion, what is it that's so challenging about replacing dairy?
Well, Stephen, the challenges in replacing dairy are many, beginning with the fact that we have to replace very functional proteins, like casein, for example, and also dairy cream. So we have to focus on a pleasant flavor, good texture and body, and also paying attention to the smooth and creamy mouthfeel, typical in a true dairy product.
That sounds like quite the task. And yet, I'd say the industry's gotten pretty close to the real thing, at least in most cases. Would you agree with that?
I would say it's come a long way, but there's still lots of room for improvement.
And that is certainly fair to say. When it comes to improving dairy alternatives, Benio does have several solutions that we think are up to the challenge. We are the world's largest producer of rice starch, and we have a long tradition of expertise when it comes to rice ingredients. Still, to be fair, we really cannot take all the credit for it. So much about what makes our rice products special comes from nature itself. Rice is unique compared to any other starch on the market, and what it truly boils down to is a small particle size, uniquely branched starch molecules, and a very neutral taste and color. These three elements really explain why rice can be nature's dairy alternative. Using these rice ingredients and also our chicory root fibers, we can harness these unique properties and they can play a big role in creating delicious dairy alternatives. Our technical experts are hard at work around the globe in our regional application centers in Europe, North and South America, and also Asia, creating great concepts that showcase these solutions. One of the first ones that I'd like to show for you today are some indulgent sweet treats created at our center in Sao Paulo. For starters, we have a dairy-free caramel spread, which we like to call our dulce sin leche. It's a delicious and versatile take on a regional favorite. Barbara, can you tell us some more about this recipe?
Yes, sure, Stephen. This was quite a challenge recipe to develop. And first, we started with an almond milk based, and to build the solids matrix, we added sugar, coconut fat, and then at the beginning of the process, we added the rice flour, providing extra solids and texture. Then, at the end of the process, we add a native rice starch to give a certain whitening effect, combined with our palatinos, a reducing sugar to optimize Maillard reaction, getting this nice caramel color you can see in the picture.
It looks fantastic. So I see you add the rice flour up front, but then the rice starch is not there to provide the texture. Is that right?
Actually, the key is that this rice starch is added at the end of the process when the solids are already very high, around 65% dry matter. And in this case, this specific rice starch will remain uncooked, giving a certain whitening effect and not contributing to the texture itself.
Wow, that's really two ways that rice ingredients can provide a benefit to one application, which is always cool to see. So you have this plant-based caramel spread, this dulce sin leche, and how could you use that then to develop a successful market product?
Well, this dulce sin leche is very versatile. You can consume it during your breakfast, adding the spread in your yogurt or spreading on bread or as a pastry filling or topping, or even part of many special desserts, for example.
Well, you know me, I do like desserts. And since you mentioned it, could any of those desserts be dairy-free as well?
Of course they can. And here we have one of our latest creations from our regional application center in São Paulo, a plant-based vanilla flan. This is a coconut-based recipe combining three of my favorite Benio ingredients: rice starch, rice flour, and long-chain inulin. The combination of a waxy rice starch and the solids of rice flour, plus the short, creamy texture of a long-chain inulin, would end up with a perfect texture expected for a flan. In this case, all products are combined at the beginning of the process, UHT treated, and then hot filled in small containers.
That's, again, a great looking application. Wouldn't that UHT treatment impact the starch that you're adding?
Oh, indeed. We have to choose the right starch, which is resistant to high temperatures and high sugar. In this case, we can use either a waxy modified starch, or a functional clean label choice.
Well, that's awesome. Anything else you'd like to tell the audience about these dessert applications?
Yes, one of the nicest features of this recipe is that you can make or prepare two different types of desserts with only a few small changes in the final preparation. As you can see, you have the traditional flan combined with the topping of dulce sin leche and a plant-based version of creme brulee.
Wow, I was already impressed. Now I don't know what else to say. I'm just blown away. So we've shown that the Benio ingredients can really create some very successful indulgent dairy alternatives. We know from Hannah's info that the plant-based category obviously goes far beyond just dessert. So how could the industry use our ingredients to innovate in other categories, like savory foods, for example?
Well, the great thing about Benio ingredients for dairy alternatives is that they can go all across categories. By playing with the usage levels, rice starch, rice flour, and inulin can also give a creamy texture and body to mimic this dairy-like mouthfeel in spreads or this plant-based cheese products, for example.
Very, very cool. Can you give a little more detail on how that recipe works?
Yes, let's jump to the recipe.
Okay.
Well, this cashew-based fermented spread we are again, in this case, playing around rice starch, rice flour, and inulin to create a full body and texture similar to a cheese-like product.
And it's interesting that this is done via fermentation. This is the same way you make dairy-free yogurts, correct?
Oh, well, not quite, Stephen. Actually, in this case, the fermentation is done at a lower temperature over a longer time to develop these cheese-like flavor notes.
Wow. So with no dairy at all, you can still develop flavors that are of a typical cheese-like bouquet. Very, very cool.
Yes.
Well, Barbara, thank you again. I can't stress enough the amazing work that you guys at the Benio Technology Center do. And is there anything else you'd like the audience to know about these formulas or the Benio ingredients we discussed today?
Yep. I'd like to highlight that when it comes to Benio solutions for dairy alternatives, the fact that our ingredients are neutral in taste and color, it makes that our rice ingredients and functional fibers can be used for texture, body, solids, and work with virtually every type of plant-based sources.
Okay. Well, Barbara, thank you again. That's all the time we have for today. I really want to thank both Barbara and Hannah for their expert input, and most importantly, thanks to our audience for joining us today. We have much more information on these and many other applications featuring Benio ingredients, and you're welcome to connect with us anytime by email or your favorite social media channel. From everyone at Benio, we wish you a healthy and successful 2022. Thanks and goodbye.